Welcome, and in this lesson, we're going to learn how to create a local repository using packages from a Red Hat distribution download or CD-ROM. So if you are logged in, and to complete this, you will need to be logged in on a Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 linuxacademy.com lab server. If you've noticed, I have Red Hat Server 7.1. It's the DVD ISO. This is the actual DVD ISO that you're to use when you are installing a Red Hat Enterprise Linux distribution. So what we're going to do is we're going to mount this on our local machine and point our yum repository to the packages and files on this CD-ROM, because it comes with about 3 gigs of files. It has all of the primary packages needed in order to basically set up your Red Hat Enterprise Linux distribution. However, this isn't absolutely encouraged because you don't receive package updates, because it's only from what's on the DVD. So in order to do this, we need to go ahead and create a new location. I'm going to do make dir -p, and we're going to create /repos, and we're going to call it local. So it's going to be our local repository. Now what we need to do is we need to mount this disk or the DVD ISO to our repos/local. But how do we do it in such a way that it can be read as a block device? Now, our ISO file isn't a block device, and we need to mount it as a block device in order to be able to read the files on the actual ISO. So to do that, we're going to use the mount command. We're going to pass it -o for options, and we're going to specify loop. This creates kind of like a loop back. It lets it read it as a block device. So we're going to go ahead and mount the Red Hat Server 7.1, and we're going to mount it to our repos local directory that we created. Now, of course, this is going to be read-only. This is much like mounting a CD-ROM. So if we had the CD-ROM basically has an ISO on it, and we would mount it the exact same way. So instead, we would just mount the CD-ROM to the repos local, and it would say it's write-protected mounting read-only, which is okay. So if we do a df-h, we see that we have our repos local. In fact, if we go into our repos/local, we do a list, we can list the files on the device because we use the loop option on our mount command. So now that this is here, because of course it has repo data available, we can actually create a repository out of this. So let's head over into our etc yum.repos.d directory, and I'm actually going to go ahead and remove my Red Hat. Now, be sure that if you remove it, you're doing this on a linuxacademy.com lab server. I'm going to remove it just so I can prove it's not there. You can just disable these repos if you wanted, but I'm actually going to go ahead and remove it. So we're going to remove Red Hat, and I'm just going to remove everything after that. So if we do an ls, you'll notice I don't have any more repo configuration files. Now, I could choose to use the yum config manager to create this, but for learning purposes, let's go ahead and create our local-repo.repo, and let's create it. So let's give our repo ID of local repo. It needs to not have spaces. That's why I have the dashes on there. Then we're going to say the name of the repositories. It'll be Red Hat Linux local repo, the base URL. So since we're referencing a location on our file system, we'll need to do a file : 3 slashes and then repos local. So it's going to say look on our file system. Then we're going to go ahead and set enabled equal to 1. And then for now, we'll set GPG check equal to 0. So let's go ahead and save and exit. Now that we've saved and exit, let's go ahead and do a yum repo list. Well, what do we see here? We see that we have our local repository that we added. We don't have any other ones because we removed them. So I'm going to go ahead and test this. I'm going to do a yum search Emacs. Now, Emacs isn't installed on my system. I can verify that by saying yum list installed Emacs. It's not installed, so I'm going to use my local repository that we mounted the ISO on, and I'm going to do a yum install Emacs. And it's going to download all of the dependencies and packages required from our locally mounted repository. This, again, is like mounting a CD-ROM that has Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 on it. And it's going to download and install it. And I had actually downloaded the ISO inside of the root directory. If you're following along on this, make sure you're in the root directory. It'll be on the Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 linuxacademy.com lab server, and you'll notice it's right there. And so that's how we're able to mount a local repository using a CD-ROM on our machine. So that's how we're able to mount a local repository either with the ISO, and again, this also works with CentOS 7 if you're using CentOS 7 or Fedora, or we're able to mount our CD-ROM if we're actually in front of the physical machine. So that concludes it for this lesson. Go ahead and complete this lesson.